Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. In the last row we ended up fighting Brawly and getting our second gym badge back in Dewford, as well as delivering the letter to Steven. And now we're at the beach house on Route 109 just south of Slateport City. This area is a miniature fight marathon. There's like 3-4 Pokemon trainers in here, and if you beat them all, you get some items. Not super important items, but I'm finding them mostly for the Pokedex angle of it, as well as the experience points, because hey, that's an extra level I can potentially get out of things. First up, our first new Pokemon is a Carvanha. Water Dark type, so it's weak to Fighting, Bug, Grass, Electric, and Fairy, but immune to Psychic, which might make the fact that I threw out Dove here a little confusing, but Dove does have access to Fairy-type moves, even if I do use Psychic-type moves at first, because I just forget for a second. Carvanhas almost always have Rough Skin for their ability, where if a Pokemon makes physical contact during an attack with a Pokemon that has Rough Skin, they lose, think, like 1/15 of their HP, somewhere about there, and if it's a multi-hit move, it'll activate on each hit, so watch out for that. With that said, Carvanha themselves, decent physical attack and okay speed to start, with some okay special attack to back it up, and when it evolves, that attack and speed only get better alongside the special attack. The big drawback is that its evolution doesn't really have much in the defenses, so you are a bit of a glass cannon. With that said, it's got a pretty decent moveset as well, on top of all the bite moves it can learn, so if you're looking for a fast attacker that can maybe even cause an opponent to flinch, you can do a lot worse than the Carvanha line, honestly. Honestly, for me personally, the biggest drawback with water types here in Hoenn, even though there are a lot of pretty good ones, is that if I want one quickly, I either have to pick Mudkip early on, which I seldom do because I almost always pick fire starters, or I have to go with Lotad because of how early you can get them. But the thing is, Lotad's only available in Sapphire Emerald and Alpha Sapphire, so if I was playing either of the versions of Ruby, I'd just be out of luck for a good water type for a little bit there. Which, while I am using Magna here, he's more here as a stopgap before my proper water type than anything else, really, more for variety's sake. Hoenn, in general, is probably the region I have the most typical team shape in mind. And while for this playthrough I do go against that a good bit, about half my team is still that general shape, but a third of that is inescapable because I always choose a fire starter, once again. For our next trainer, they also have a new Pokemon, but this fight ends up taking a while because of my dumbassery, frankly, so we're still speeding up just less than I have been with other fights. Next new Pokemon is Sableye. Dark Ghost type, which means prior to the introduction of Fairy here in Generation 6, this thing had no types it was weak to, but notably it was immune to normal fighting and psychic. Despite how promising all that sounds, Sableye's kind of underwhelming. Very slow, not much HP, and its attack and defense stats aren't anything super to write home about. When it did get a Mega Evolution, which we'll talk about what those are down the line, it did get a notable boost into becoming a pretty good defensive tank, and it does have a decent learn set on the whole. It's just that this is a Pokemon that takes some real investment to make super good. Really good held items, good EV training. This is one that I have considered and have used a couple of times, but I just remember not being super grabbed by it in the process of doing so. It does have some interesting abilities, though. Namely, it can either have Keen Eye, which prevents it from losing any of its accuracy at all in battle, and from Gen 4 Beyond, it also got this Stall ability, which guarantees that it goes second in battle, which might sound strange to use, but there's enough setups where going second can be a benefit where it actively can be pretty helpful. Already going into our next new Pokemon, though, this is Goldeen, a pure water type, meaning it is weak to grass and electric. It can have Swift Swim or Water Veil for its ability. Swift Swim doubles the speed of the Pokemon when there's a rain weather condition on battle, and Water Veil prevents the Pokemon from even having a burn status ailment placed on it, which can be pretty beneficial on some water types, admittedly. With that said, stat-wise, Goldeen's alright. It's a first stage Pokemon, so it does get better as it evolves, of course. But there's a lot better you could do for water types, but also there's a hell of a lot worse, because I don't remember if I've even ever talked about this. Water is the most common type amongst all of Pokemon, which makes sense given in the real world, I think we're still considering species of fish underwater and all that at a pretty decent rate. But also because there's so many of them, you could also do a hell of a lot worse with water types. One of my least favorite Pokemon to use ever is a water type, and we'll be talking about them later on in this very LP, I can guarantee you that much. Plus, and this is technically getting ahead of generation here, Gen 7 introduced a very specific water type that has the worst base stats in the series, even worse than historically worst Pokemon Sunkern. But that Pokemon at least has a very specific mechanic that's really interesting to get around that, which we'll talk more about that whenever I get to Gen 7 in probably like a decade. With that said, that's that trainer out of the way now, and I believe both of the other trainers in the Seashore House have no new Pokemon for us to talk about, so we're just gonna cut past those specific battles. There's the kid down here on the bottom right, and then the sailor on the right wall over there. Upon clearing them all, we can actively go talk to the owner of the Seashore House and get our rewards. You're scorching hot, those battles blazed. I'm more than pleased. As thanks for showing me your hot streak, I want you to have these. It's half a dozen bottles of Soda Pop. Sodas are really good healing items, all things considered. They actively heal 3 times the amount as a base level potion for the exact same price, and you can buy more from him for 300 a pop, so hey, if you want some decent healing items, not the worst idea. With that said, welcome to Slateport City proper, but before we check out most of the city, we're gonna first head here into the Slateport Market. There's a couple of shops in here we actively can't access yet, like this one on the bottom right here. We need a specific TM later to access that. But notably, there's a sparkle over here. This is an Alakazite. Any item that plays that jingle and ends in "ite" is largely a Mega Stone, which when given to the Pokemon in question, allows them to Mega Evolve, which usually gives them a ridiculous new ability and stat boost. With that said, we're not able to access Mega Evolution ourselves for a good while in the game still, and I'll be saving talking about the Mega Evolutions in question for when the Pokemon themselves shows up from here on out. Just know, largely, they're pretty good. Now, the incense seller here has some pretty potentially good ones. The luck incense in specific I really recommend, because if you put that on whoever's in your first party slot, you're just guaranteeing yourself a higher money yield from any given trainer battle. But also the ones that boost the power of certain type moves are pretty useful in the case you're not too confident in a Pokemon's stat or strengths at this point in time. This is what I mean by, there's Pokemon that have not great stats that are still perfectly usable because either their moveset's pretty good or an item can really help substitute along to boost them along. Notably, this NPC will give the Pokemon in your first party slot the effort ribbon, assuming their effort values are maxed out, which since for my main 3 party members they already are, hey, that goes a long way. The NPC next to her will also sell vitamins. Those are the EV items that have existed since Gen 1. Giving those to a Pokemon will raise their respective EV by 10, which, honestly, if you were waiting on super trading for some reason, this is probably the best place to do it at this point, because you can really buy some vitamins to help boost them along certain pathways if you don't want to just fully focus on super training. But again, that only really depends on if you really care to do it. You can absolutely just play a game like this without worrying about EV training at all. In fact, largely, that's how I tend to play them. It's only really when super training's around that I super focus on it, because it gives me a meter I can fill, which, God, if that's not a way that describes how I tend to play games, I don't know what is. This here is the Pokemon Fan Club. I'm the chairman of the Pokemon Fan Club. Being the chairman, I'm naturally the most important. No one can best me when it comes to raising Pokemon. No one. In any contest, my victory is a foregone conclusion, but that would deprive others of their enjoyment. So I now while away my time examining the Pokemon of others. It is marvelous to witness how others have raised Pokemon. The contented faces of properly raised Pokemon, the kind and loving gazes of their trainers. My heart is overwhelmed. There is so much happiness. Oh, excuse me, I seem to have nattered on far too long. Please do allow me to examine your Pokemon and see how it has grown. I see. It's not bad, but it's not good either. You, the trainer, must put more effort in me. I suggest giving more Pokeblocks. The chairman does actually have a couple of items for us, but we can't grab them until we've raised another facet of our Pokemon stats up to a certain point. But getting ahead of ourselves here as well as something we'll be seeing later this part, I'm not actively tackling that until post-game for a couple reasons. Talking to this specific NPC with your lead Pokemon's friendship high enough will make her give you the Soothe Bell. The Soothe Bell, if held by a Pokemon, makes any increases to that Pokemon's friendship stat be increased by 50%, which, useful, but not the most important held item, because largely as long as you're catching Pokemon along the way, you'll raise their friendship high enough quickly enough that any moves you'd want to use with it are actively easy to get. But hey, it's there in case you're trying to raise up certain Pokemon from hatching and all that for post-game and all that jazz. It has a use, it's just not one I tend to use. Now, notably, the NPC on the bottom right here, the Pokemon Fan Club's a little interesting. They'll offer to trim the Pokemon Furfrou if you have one for a small fee. Furfrou is a standard Gen 6 Pokemon, whose entire gimmick was it had 10 total designs you could trim it between. That served no practical purpose in combat, but can help personalize your team a little further, and given the generalized focus on fashion, individuality, and all that in the main Gen 6, it's nice that they at least brought that over here, so in the case you traded that Pokemon over, you could do something with it. With that said, I don't think there's a way to catch Furfrou naturally in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire at all, so furthest thing from my mind, really. Worth noting, this is what the shop stock's looking like now that we got 2 gym badges. You can start getting things like the higher level repels and all that, which could be useful. I'm not using them. And notably, the secondary market here actively sells a lot of the X items that you can use in battle to boost a Pokemon's stats a stage or 2. With that said, I also never use those. In fact, if anything, those are the items I'm most likely to sell in a given Pokemon game, because what am I going to do with them, really? Long line, huh? Runs through the times I lined up to buy Smash Hit games. Why are we even lining up and paying? We should just march in. So we got a bunch of Team Aqua grunts here, which totally doesn't bode poorly for the near future of things that could happen here in town. With that said, while they have humorous dialogue, you actually never need to interact with them. You can just head right on over to our destination, which, now that I think about it, I haven't even said what we're here to do today. We got the Devon parts from, well, Devon, a few parts back over in Rustboro. Our goal is to take that to Captain Stern, whose lab is just to the south of us at the moment. Otherwise, Slateport, especially in the original game, kind of feels like a stopgap destination, as there's no gym here for us to conquer. This is just kind of a mixed industrial vacation town, which I won't lie, kind of threw me off when I first played the game, because starting with Fire Red Leaf Green like I did, largely in my brain, if it ended with city, it had a gym largely. With that said, that isn't always true, as we've seen since. If this goes here, and that goes over there, then where does this thing go? What about that doohickey? Yeah, I can't make heads or tails of this. Huh? You? Sorry, I'm Doc. Captain Stern commissioned me to drop designs for a ferry. Oh, those parts you have. Those are the Devon parts. But, this won't do. Guess Captain Stern's probably off at the Oceanic Museum again. Sorry, but can I ask you to find the captain and give the parts to him? I was just up there and we couldn't get in, but I guess now that we've hit that flag, we can. Mind you, I say that. Worth noting, I believe you leave Slateport via the north into the next route. You could explore the route a little bit, namely accessing some grass to potentially catch some new Pokemon. But just past that, I think there's a group of Team Aqua Grunts also blocking the way up there, so you actively can't really leave Slateport until we get done what we need to get done around here. But I can't remember if that's in the original game or if that's just an Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire thing. Future me will need to kind of correct me on that more than likely. Now, that specific NPC brought up Sea Mauville. That is an area that's technically unique to Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. We're not going to be accessing that for a good while still, though. The reason I say technically unique is that the location is there in the original game, but it's a completely different area in Ruby Sapphire Emerald. We actually just barely saw the entrance to it on our way over here through Mr. Briny last part. Now, coming up, this is something I really appreciate about Gen 3 Beyond in Pokemon, which is largely just due to how much more they could do on a Game Boy Advanced cart than a Game Boy Color cart. They started doing a lot more little touches in towns and cities to help set them apart from each other, like the tiling here in Slateport, or the lighthouse over there, that serve no actual purpose besides aesthetics. But it goes a long way to make a region feel a lot more complete. Gen 1 and 2, because of the limitations they were working with and all that, didn't and couldn't really have that unless they actively served some sort of purpose. And I just really appreciate that. Gen 3 Beyond in Pokemon is where this world really started to feel like it was coming together. And I honestly, for all my issues with it, Gen 4 especially is where that really went into overdrive. So this here is the Name Raider. What that NPC allows you to do is change the nickname of a Pokemon, assuming it's one you yourself have caught. If it's one that was traded over, you're not going to be able to change it, technically. There is an infinitesimally small chance that a Pokemon trainer you train with can have the same trainer ID and secret ID, which is a whole background mechanic, to allow you to change their name, but it's very unlikely. Now, over there was the port for Slateport City, but I ended up not actively showcasing the footage there because there's not really anything of note there besides a vending machine you can buy soda pops at. Just keep in mind that that area exists for later. After that jump cut, though, I'm back over here at Slateport Market, and I just bought the Luck Incense from the merchant here at the market. Which, like I mentioned, if you put that on a Pokemon and they actively take a turn in battle, you just get more money out of it. So whoever's in your first slot should basically always have that, just to make sure you have a lot more money moving forward. Mind you, in general, especially starting in like Gen 6, money is nowhere near the issue it could have been in some of the earlier games. Mind you, that also might come down to me buying less because I know I only need this many items or Pokeballs and all that jazz, but getting something like that early and stocking up will help you buy a lot of the more expensive items towards post-game a lot more easily. Welcome to the Oceanic Museum. The entrance fee is 50 Poke. Will you like to enter? Sure. Enjoy the museum. Like in Gen 1, we have a whole little museum, albeit it's entirely focused on the ocean, and there's some neat little dialogue here, investigating all the items. But if you actively just want to progress with plot, you want to head up to the second floor. But in specific, I want to make sure I actively talk to the Team Aqua member on the bottom right of the first floor, as they have an item for us. Ah, what are you doing here? Me? I'm the Team Aqua member you thumped before, remember? Here, take this. You have to forgive me. And we get TM46 Thief. After Thief deals damage, it steals the opponent Pokemon's held item, if there is one at all, really. With that said, how it works in detail depends on which generation you're playing. Writ large, if you steal an item from a wild Pokemon, it's added to your inventory permanently. But in trainer battles, it stopped doing that effect in Gen 5. The item gets returned at the end of battle. Some items also cannot be stolen at all, usually unique per save file items like Mega Stones or things of that nature. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but honestly, especially in post-game type play on your own, at times in competitive to my knowledge, it's an understatement how much of a game changer this move can be if you put it in at the right time. The museum here, though, is another area I just distinctly remember the sprite work very vividly of in the Game Boy Advanced release, and I honestly couldn't really tell you why. Yes? If you're looking for Stern, that would be me. Ah, those must be the parts I ordered from Mr. Stone at Devon. Thank you for bringing the case all this way. Now I can prepare for our expedition at last. Ah, great. Hold up a moment, we'll be taking those. What was that? Who are you people? We're Team Aqua. Our boss wants the parts in that case, so shut your yap and fork it over. Oh boy, more Team Aqua grunts with more Carvanhas. Now that we've actually seen Carvanha, get used to seeing it from Team Aqua grunts. It might as well be their coughing or Ekans from Team Rocket back in Gen 1. It is one of the most common Pokemon you're going to be seeing moving forward, at least here in Sapphire, Emerald, or Alpha Sapphire. Over in Ruby and Omega Ruby, there's a different Pokemon that fulfills that role. Ah, I got beaten by a little brat. Oh man, what a disaster. The boss is gonna be furious. Sniveling wimp. Stand back and watch me, the 27th strongest member of Team Aqua, take care of this kid. You're ranked that granularly? Now, this particular Team Aqua grunt has a pretty long-standing tradition Pokemon. This is Zubat. Poison flying type, so it's weak to rock, electric, psychic, and ice, but immune to ground. This Pokemon and its evolutions largely have the inner focus ability, where if a move could make them flinch like Bite, they will never flinch. Though in Gen 5, they also got the Infiltrator ability as a hidden ability, which allows them to get past things like Light Screen and Reflect, and is really good. Zubat, for as nightmare-inducing as it is for veterans of any version of Kanto, is one of my favorites to use long-term. In its base stage here at Zubat, it's nothing too much to write home about. It's got an okay speed stat for a first stage Pokemon. But as it evolves, especially into the evolution it got in Gen 2, it becomes a really fast Pokemon with some pretty good stats otherwise to really write it home. To the point where I used its evolution in the prior Pokemon LP. I love this line, for as much as we're tired of seeing them in caves at this point in the franchise. From there, I believe, though, the next Pokemon is another Carvanha. Like I said, get used to that. Get used to Rough Skin going off. Unironically, and probably only slightly exaggeratedly, across any playthrough of Hoenn where you end up going against Team Aqua, Rough Skin genuinely might take up upwards of 5 to 6 minutes of your playtime just with it going off and the HP draining. He beat the 27th strongest grunt in Team Aqua? That's not as impressive as you make it sound. Now what? If we don't get that case, we're in for it. I never thought we'd be stopped by some meddling kid. What do we have here? I came to see what was taking so long just to steal a few parts, and I find you simps getting beat by this kid. Heh, that's quite a fierce expression for such a wee little scamp. That face tells me you're not just another mindless trainer brat. The name's Archie. The rough-looking lot you see here are members of my team, Team Aqua. So tell me, boyo, do you know that Pokemon people and all life in this world depend on the sea for life? That's right. The sea is an irreplaceable treasure for every living thing on this planet. But with our selfish extravagance, humanity dirties the great ocean, destroying this source of all life. Day by day, we're all destroying our most precious resource. If we humans suffer from our actions, well, maybe we'll end up getting what we deserve. But what about the Pokemon in our world? The Pokemon that no longer have a place to live because we stole and soiled their seas. The Pokemon that won't have a place to raise their young and watch them grow. We are creating a world in which innocent Pokemon suffer as a result of our actions. And that is something I can't forgive. That's why I came to a decision, see? The foolish actions of my fellow humans, the seas we have blighted, nature itself. I will return everything to its unspoiled beginnings. Huh. It's not like me to talk so much. Never mind, little scamp. I'll withdraw for now and leave you be. But understand this. Get in my way again, and you won't walk away unscathed next time. Remember that, at least. We're moving out, lads. Young man. Kyle, is it? That was quite a tense situation. Thank you for helping me out. Oh, yes, I almost forgot that you brought the parts from Devon. Here you go. This is it. I can't be standing around here. It's finally time for us to set out on our ocean floor expedition. Thanks for this, and excuse me. Alright, with that, our duties here in Slateport are concluded for now. We'll be coming back here for a couple things later on as well. Worth noting, though, not only can we head north from Slateport and continue on towards our next major destination, but because we've cleared Team Aqua out of the museum, there's now a lot more NPCs in here. With that said, I don't think any of them have any items for you, but if you want to read as much dialogue and miniature lore and things about Hoenn as you can, you might as well. Honestly, it's not like talking to NPCs in Pokemon takes that long, especially when there actually were NPCs of note. That's actively one of my biggest issues with Gen 9, but I'll get more into that when I eventually reach Gen 9, probably. I miss proper towns and NPCs. I like a lot about Scarlet by its layout, but that's one of the things I really don't like about it. Hey, that's Lizzie and Owly doing a shoot over there. Are you serious? Lizzie? Let's go! Hi, everybody! Lizzie here. Me and my Altaria, Ollie, have come to Slateport City's Contest Spectacular Hall for a bit of fun. Well then, watch me as I dive right in again today. Yeah! Dazzling, dizzying, doldrums defying. Dazzling, dizzying. Lizia's miraculous contest scouting. Start! Lizzie, scout me to be your next boyfriend. Lizia, Allie! Alrighty, I'm gonna bring another fantastic trainer into the wild world of contesting. Eeny, meeny, miny. You there, watching me with that baffled expression on your face. Hi! Have you never joined in the contest? That's just what I want to hear. Then let's get this show on the road. This is the trainer I'm gonna scout today. And his name is... Kyle. When I take a good look, I can easily see that Kyle is a powerful trainer, with several badges of his own already. Kyle, you can enjoy Contest Spectaculars at the Pokemon Contest Hall right here. Now listen up, because I don't just want to see you making your Pokemon strong. I want to see you bringing out a whole new brilliant set of them to show off. So here you go, take these. This is a contest pass, which is the first thing that anyone needs to take part in a contest spectacular. And this one's a Pokéblock kit, which lets you make Pokéblocks for your Pokemon out of berries. These two items are going to sit there unused in my inventory for a majority of the LP, I won't lie. This is one of the last things I actively do. I'll talk more about why momentarily. Kyle's story begins today. Yep, and this chapter should be titled... A Sudden Encounter, Miraculous Contest Scouting. That's what I'd call it. Now everybody out there watching, you better expect great things from Kyle because I do. That's it for today's Lizia's Miraculous Contest Scouting. See you all next time. Lizzie, you're so cute. If you feel up for it, try your hand in a contest for me, okay? So now we can access Pokemon contests, or contest spectaculars more specifically here in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. This is a side mode that puts a secondary definition and effect on your Pokemon stats in moves that has an entirely unique rule set that is honestly pretty interesting. But I'm not going to focus on this until near the end of the LP just to blitz through it all at once. You can go through it slowly, but I'd rather wait until my Pokemon have the potential to have the best movesets they can and the best stats they can for it. But if you take a look at your moves or your Pokemon stats and press right, you can actually see the contest uses or the contest stats, namely cool, beauty, cute, clever, and tough. We'll be focusing on all that later on. Don't expect to see that plot line for a good little while now. With that said, welcome to Route 110, the location of Hoenn Cycling Road, but we're not actually going to be able to deal with that until we access the next town. Let's keep going through Route 110 and head for Mount Chimney. Wow, that's quite far. Why don't we take a rest in Mauville City? It's on the way. Great idea. That's the group of NPCs that will not get out of your way until you've actively done all the stuff we can over in Slateport. But before we actively talk about the stuff here on this route, we got some new Pokemon. Isabelle here is going to throw out perhaps the most directly, obviously, a Pikachu clone in the series has been Plusle and eventually Minun. Plusle and Minun are both electric types, meaning they're only immune to ground. And not for nothing, they don't have the worst special stats in the world. Plusle is more focused on special attack, Minun more on special defense, and they're decently fast too. But while their learn set's alright, I don't really like using either of the two Pokemon she throws out because their gimmick is they're meant to be used together. Plusle's main ability is plus, and Minun's is minus. If they're in a double battle with each other, their special attack stats are increased by 50%, making them honestly really good special attackers. But since it's doubles exclusive, not exactly the most usable unless you're going into that format. With that said, notably both Plusle and Minun do have pretty interesting hidden abilities. Plusle gets Lightning Rod, whereas Minun gets Volt Absorb. Lightning Rod actively draws any electric type moves that are used in doubles over to them. So in the case, say you throw Plusle out with a water type, you could actually let the water type effectively not have its electric weakness while the Plusle's out. Meanwhile, Volt Absorb, if it gets hit by an electric attack, it recovers HP. Both those abilities make them much more usable Pokemon, but because they're hidden abilities, they're not exactly the easiest to get in the world. These are cute Pokemon, but out of the Pikachu clones, they're probably the ones I've used the least at large. I do appreciate Plusle and Minun a lot as a tutorial of sorts for how double battles can really change up how things go with abilities interplaying with each other and all that. Especially because if memory serves, it's the only time they outwardly did that for any new battle types being introduced. Because while there are, like, the specialized Gigantamax forms in Gen 8 and the really good Terra Crystal types over in Gen 9, the equivalent new battle types they introduced in, like, Gen 5 or Gen 6 just never really got the same kind of focus that doubles did. Possibly because they realized they probably would either be too slow or just didn't have the same staying power that doubles did. Which I at least appreciate the mentality of, okay, this didn't work, let's just not stick with it. Even if I do prefer when devs are like, okay, this didn't work, let's figure out why and refine it. There are times where introducing too much, like they did with some of the specialty battle types towards Gen 5, got to be too much. And it's funny because you can immediately notice it because, say, in like Gen 6, those almost immediately disappear completely outside of some of the competitive scene. Plus, I might also learn a lot of move sets tailored around doubles, like that one that would just swap the items around, which, in the right case, using that can really shift the tides of battle in your favor or in the opponent's, but in a pretty relatively early game trainer battle with singles, it really won't matter too much at all. Also, I just realized I never actually talked about Dove learning Magical Leaf. That's going to be staying on her moveset the rest of the LP. Magical Leaf is a grass type move with decent power, but what's most notable about it is it completely bypasses accuracy checks, so it always hits, barring the opponent Pokemon being in a semi-invulnerable state due to 2-turn moves and things like that. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 7, we're checking out the Trick House. See you guys then.